Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Villar Iñaki, Google Developer Expert Android ขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยค่ะ
Hi, hello. Good. Well, in the now it's +1. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much, guys, because have you sorted everything. Before start, how many Android developers we have in the room? Okay, and how many of you are testing the code? And well, I don't see a lot of hands, so that means that there is not a lot of instrumentation test. First of all, I'm Iñaki Villar. I'm working in Agoda. I'm Google Developer Expert, and this is my, a way to contact me is by Twitter and Google+. So I'm not very active on Facebook. So the topic for today is talk about Firebase, of course, so first of all, I want to do an introduction about testing, right? Because nowadays in the Android platform, it's much better than if you remember 2 or 3 years ago. So now as engineers, developer, everybody is delivering, everybody, I see that they're not raised hands, but you have to send the test with your code. So it's something that is like in the contract. It's something very important. And I'm talking about only the code, right? Because if I'm telling you that this class prints hello world, you can trust me, right? And you can say, well, this class works, this class doesn't work, but that's it. So it's not a big deal for me. What happens if I say that this class calculate the payroll for you? You want a guarantee. You want something that specifies that, for example, I want to know that this class is talking about money, and I want to know that it's working. So that's the point of the testing. And actually, in Android, so everybody is testing the code. Okay, so if you are not doing that, you have to test your code. Okay, but this is not the main topic of this talk. The main topic is about testing the user interface. And as we can see in the screen, so testing the user interface, testing the applications in Android usually has been very hard because we have different, maybe if I'm not wrong, I think that more than 200 manufacturers, only talking about manufacturers. We have different screen sizes, even we have different keyboards. So say that it's quite hard trying to test one application and to say that, oh, with this test, I'm doing everything okay. Another point is the fragmentation with the API. So nowadays, we have different API version on our phones. So that means that, for example, the main version is Lollipop. So still, we are not Marshmallow. We are not Nougat. So it's one thing that we have to take care. Of course, that Google has some amazing tools to support the new features in the previous versions. But so we have this difference of the API. How we can deal with this fragmentation with the test lab. So Firebase, it's as you can see today, you have seen today, is not only about one product. Firebase has analytics, push notifications, and one of the points is the test lab. The test lab is one product to test applications. Before we saw in the previous presentations of the Score Soccer, and provides a cloud-based infrastructure to test your applications in Android. With one single operation, you can test your apps, you can deploy the test, and the logs and the videos are made available in the Firebase console user interface to check. And one thing very important, even if you haven't written any test, you still can use Test Lab to exercise your applications. How works? How works? What's the key features of Test Lab? And we are not using another another tool, another solution. First is test on real devices. It's a very good point because, of course, we have to test more accurate possible way to our users, right? And our users is using the real devices. With TestLab, we can detect one problem with one specific configuration of Nexus 5. Imagine that we have with the Nexus 5 API 22 one problem, and we can detect that in an easy way. Of course, run the test of the applications, and the last one, the workflow integration. We can run the test with Android Studio. We can use Firebase Console user interface, and we can use gCloud. It's one thing that we are going to see later. So how it works internally? Internally, we are working with Google Data Center. That's where the devices are there. And this is a stupid thing, but I can tell you that working with real devices, the office, for example, could be hard. Okay, it could be hard because there's a lot of things that could happen. You can receive an update from Samsung. Somebody can touch the screen and break your test. Or somebody can disconnect the cable, whatever. So whatever. There's a lot of factors that could be the unstable environment with your real device at the office, in this case, in-house. But in talking about Google Data Center, you know that there is one guy for you taking care about this stuff. So you know that nobody is going to disconnect the USB cable from you. Okay? And the other important thing is that we are talking about scalability and reliability of the servers of Google. The next step is understand from where we can run the test. Again, we can run by gCloud, Firebase Console, and Android Studio. So these tests are running by the Google Data Center. And finally, who is building this test? Who is building the instrumentation test? So here we have different options. We can develop with Espresso and UI Automator, tools that we will see later, and Robotium is another tool. So, taking in summary, very clear, we have Google Data Center where the real devices are. Then with gCloud, Firebase Console, or Android Studio, we can run this test. And with Espresso and UI Automator or Robotium, we can build the test, write the test. Okay, it's not all, because we have a new thing. It's called RobotTest. It's in the Firebase Test Console, and that's the tool that it doesn't mind if you haven't written the test. So it's testing the app for you. And you can run the tests with gCloud and with Firebase Console. Okay, and what's the implementation path to start working with TestLab? First of all, write the test, of course. Second, choose a test environment. And finally, run the test and review the results. Okay, let's start with writing tests. The first option that we saw before was Espresso and UI Automator. These tools with the Android JUnit runner are the Android testing support library. Okay, before we saw that the Android design library, right? So the Android testing support library, it's another library provided by Google to help us to test applications. Okay, Espresso is one library, one framework to test the user interface. As well, UI Automator. The only difference is that UI Automator is used to test cross-apps. Imagine that, for example, you want to test your application, what happens if you change the language, okay? So you are interacting with other application of the system, not with your app. That's the perfect use case for UI Automator. And the Android JUnit runner is the new instrumentation runner for Android. The instrumentation is a key concept in the testing, okay? To understand a little bit, let's put a simple example. Imagine that you start your app, okay? And then in your screen, in your activity, you press back. What's happened? The activity closed, right? What happened internally? The method onDestroy is called. But who is calling this on destroy method? You? No, the system. Okay? So with testing, the instrumentation API allows you to access this kind of special service for test your application. Because remember, when you are testing, you want to start one activity and close the activity. So the instrumentation API is the hook to the Android system. Espresso, it's not a secret that I'm a huge fan of Espresso, and in my opinion, it's a game changer in the world of the testing, because, well, it's targeted, first of all, to developers that they have a knowledge about the code base. And for me, it's important, and I think it's fundamental, because I spent maybe in the past a lot of time trying to speak with people of iOS, people from QA, trying to define the ID of one view. So always when we have a convention about our naming, so I didn't understand why we have to be driven by other parts if we are talking about the code. So say that, Espresso, it's, you have this knowledge about the code. So that means that if you are using dependency injection, for example, and you are expecting that one element is injected and you have one test condition, you know these things that, for example, with other language, with a high abstract language, maybe it's harder. Another key thing for Espresso is the threading. Okay, the threading in Java is not very the most easy way on the way, and you know that Android is running in this case in Java. So Android, your code, when you are updating the user interface, for example, so you are in the main thread, okay? The tests are not running in the main thread. The tests are running in the instrumentation thread. So when you are trying to run something, you want to communicate between the two threads. And it's when the pain starts, right? This communication, imagine that you are trying to get one view from the instrumentation thread. You have to ask all the time to the main thread if the view has rendered. And could be a little bit annoying, and you have to take care about things that you are not aware because you want to test. This with Espresso is easy because you don't have to take care about anything about that. Okay? When you are checking something on the screen, you know that it's in the screen. You don't have to wait. You don't have to pray. I don't know. Okay, how's the language of Espresso? It's very easy. You have to think like a user. If I want to test this screen as user, first of all, I want to find a view. I want to find the button. Then I want to perform an action. And then I want to do an assert, a check. So as you can see, the language is very clear. We are using view matchers for the view. View matchers, well, we are using Hamcrest. It's a library to object matching. That means that I can access any element on the view hierarchy with different matchers, in this case ID. Then I can do a perform operation like click and do an assertion. Honestly, I can be here maybe 2 hours talking about Espresso because I like it. We are using Espresso in Agoda, and could be easy, could be complex, but it's not the topic of today, okay? Another way to write tests is with Robotest. Robotest is a tool test integrated in the Firebase console. And remember that before I was talking about that you, even if you haven't written any test, you can use TestLab. It's with this tool. And it's very cool because Robotest tries to analyze your user interface and simulate user activities. What's mean? So I don't know if you remember Monkey Runner. It's one tool for Android for tests. It's like Monkey Runner, but Monkey Runner was random. So you start your test and always was trying to, like a monkey, to click in different parts of the application. Robotest, no. Robotest is always doing the same for the same device configuration and device. That means that it's perfect to catch some bugs and to use in regression tests. And you don't have to take care about anything. You configure, you have only 2 params to configure. The maximum depth, because well, let's talk on a simple app that I have a list of categories. I have the detail of the category, and finally, I have the option to share in a social way. That means that I have 3 levels. So this is the maximum level that you can define with Robotest. I think that the maximum is 50. So still you have a lot of, well, I mean, 50 level of profundity of depth is a lot. And the timeout as well, because you are running in cloud, maybe you require 5 minutes, 3 minutes to run one single test, and you can define this single layout. Before, in the talk of the morning, we saw some logs and on the map. It was very cool. Then we are going to see one example. We have some restrictions, of course. First of all, you have to use Robotest with the UI framework provided by Google. So that means that, well, the views, the views has to depend from view and view group. The sign-in, it's only at the moment with Google, and it's not allowed to use scripting, right? So you cannot update the script of the test by yourself. Once we have selected, we know how to write tests with Espresso, UI, Automator, or Robotest. The next point is select the environment, right? Where I want to test. To do that, we have a different test dimensions. So that means that there are different like attributes for the device to select what we want. And in this case are the device type. So I mean that we have the Nexus 5, Nexus 7 is a different device type. The API level could be 22, 23. The locale, important, the language, and the screen orientation. And before you ask me, there is no Galaxy Note 7. So there is no problem in the Google Office to have these kind of devices. So then we have the test executions. This is for any valid combination of the dimension that you have selected, you want to create a dimension. So that means that imagine that I'm selecting the Nexus 4, but for API 23, it's not valid because we are not supporting this API version for Nexus 4. So the test execution, that means that all available test dimensions that you have selected for one test, okay? With all combinations, you could have 200 different test executions, and it's a lot. And finally, we have finally the test matrix. This is the combination of two. Only to see one example with the test execution, imagine that I have 2 elements. I want to select 2 device types, Nexus 5, Nexus 7, 2 APIs, one locale, and one orientation, portrait in this case. So how many executions we have here? 4. So that means that you are running 4 times for the test in 4 different devices. Okay, if you select more, well, be careful because you can run in a different biling process. Okay, talking about the physical devices, we have at the moment Asus, HTC, LG, Motorola, and Samsung. Every time, well, Google say that it's updating the list of devices often, so we can have the new ones in soon. As well, you have the virtual devices, not the physical devices, but still. So I prefer to work with the virtual physical devices if we are working on regression testing, but it's up to you. The difference is the price. Then we are going to talk about that. So we have selected, we know how to write the test. Second, we know how to select the dimension, where I want to execute the test. And finally, I want to run the test. That's the last step. So we have the three options, Firebase Console, Android Studio, and G-Cloud. Let's go quick on this part. Firebase Console is the same place to access for messaging, analytics, all the options of Firebase. And we can see in this case, all the executions for my project. In this case, I have one for instrumentation and another for robo. This is the matrix. That means the test dimension plus the test execution. To create a new project related with Test Lab, Firebase Test Lab, it's quite easy. We have to create a normal project, first of all. Then we have to select the client. Of course, has to be Android. And fill some information like the application ID and the SHA if it's required. That's it. That's everything. The final step in this case is generating a dialog, and you have to copy the content of this dialog in the content of the build Gradle in your build Gradle, okay? Because it's generating some configurations with the library, class path, etc. Finally, you will have this menu on the left with all the options, because it's not only about test labs. You have available all the options of the Firebase product. Okay. Now the next step could be run the test, and from Firebase Console UI, we can run a robot test, or we can run an instrumentation test. Okay. If we select whatever of these options, finally, we have to select the devices by type, API level, orientation. And finally, we have to wait only the results in this case. Okay, the results are very cool. We saw before in the presentation of this morning, we have different tabs: logs, screenshots, activity map, and videos. The logs represents the log cut in this case. The screenshots, you don't have to do anything. The screenshots are generated, but you have one option as well to generate the screenshots. And finally, the activity map. The activity map, I think it's a real cool tool. And as we saw before, so it's trying to go deeper in your application and explain all the actions that it's doing. If you go to the detail, you can see the action. So in this case, we are starting the activity. Then we are doing a click in a linear layout, so you have all the details in this activity map. So you can run in Google Play as well. It's integrated in Google Play. I think it's awesome. Okay, the next point to run the test after Firebase, we can run, of course, in Android Studio. We are using the new version of Android Studio 2.2, and it's quite easy. First of all, you have to activate in the Firebase, in the Android Studio, the Firebase console, and it's opening like a menu drawer on the right with the different options of the Firebase. We will select the Firebase Test Lab, and from this moment we have to set up, or we have to connect our application with Firebase. The next step would be write the test with Espresso, because in Android Studio you have to write the test. It's not like the robot test. The robot tests are only available in gCloud and Firebase Console user interface, not in the Android Studio. And finally, you have to run after writing the test, you have to run the test. How we are doing that? So first of all, we have to select the module of the application. It's like always, the new runner as always, but the target in this case is different. We are not going to an emulator, we are not going to a real device, we are selecting the Firebase Test Lab matrix. And then we have the matrix configuration to do that, okay? And that's it. So once we have selected everything, it's like in the Firebase console, we finally can wait for the results. So it's quite similar to the Firebase user interface console. The third part is gCloud. gCloud is a tool for access, like a command line interface to work with Google Cloud products. It's not only about Test Lab. It's talking about, for example, if you have to do some computation with Compute Engine, if you have to work with Google Cloud directly, you can do that by terminal, so by a command line with gCloud. It's perfect to work with CI environments, with Jenkins, with TeamCity, whatever. So it's quite easy. First of all, you have to download the JDK, in this case, the SDK from Google Cloud, and you have to do some quite simple configuration, the updating, configuring your project, the authentication. Which commands we can run? So first, easy to retrieve the available device list that we have. and run the test. So imagine that you have a job in Jenkins, and every time that you press the button or at night you want to run the test. In TestLab, you can type this command and make it available. So let's see deeper. The type of the test is robo, so that means it's not instrumentation, it's robo. We have to say which APK, which devices, IDs we want, Nexus 6, Nexus 7, versions of the API, locales, the orientation, and timeout. Okay, quite simple, right? So the same for instrumentation, but the only difference is that we have to say which test APK we need, and the type, of course, and all the other stuff is with. And that's the entire help for this command. We have a lot of more options, of course. And if you want to see more deeper, you can type gcloud help in your command line and you get all the results. And that's it. So finally, you only have to wait for the results. Okay? Perfect. It's okay, everything that I'm talking about, Firebase console, everything, but I think it's better to go in a real demo to see that how it works internally. Okay, well, first of all, we have here the terminal, okay, and we can see I download before the gcloud, the JDK, and I can do a gcloud beta test Android device list. That means that I want to retrieve all the available device lists that we have in the console. Okay, you see? Okay, that's it. And now I want to run one robot test of what? I have one application here. It's a simple app that is only 2 activities. So I want to do some tests with Robo in this case. Okay, let's go first to run the test by console. That's it. Remember, the type is Robo. The application that it's built already. I want to do for these 2 devices, these 2 locales. Well, let's change things because I don't want to run a lot of tests, only in English, for only one device, and the timeout is set. So that's it. Now I'm trying to trigger test on the cloud for the test lab. So we have to wait, right? Okay, meanwhile, we can start using one. I don't know if I have I want to show you one cool feature that before we saw with Egg, and it's the Espresso test recorder. So even if you are working in Android Studio and you want to write test, but I don't know, so maybe you don't want to write, you can use the Espresso test recorder. So first of all, this is the simple app, a simple hello world, okay? When I click on tools, I have one additional activity and I want to test that. Okay, so let's go to the Android Studio, and in tools, in run, I can click on record Espresso test. Okay, what happened here? I have to select first the device, the emulator, and I have to wait. So that means that now, like here, I don't have a white screen, so all the screens that you are seeing, the Android Studio, the terminal, and full screen, I have to combine both. So first the emulator and this screen. This screen is only to record what's happening. Okay, I go to the emulator and I click here. And then I click here. So that means that it's recording the elements that I'm doing actually. So first the navigation and then clicking on the option of test. And not only this, I can do assertions as well. So if I click on add assertions, I can retrieve the UI the view hierarchy of the user interface and ask for if exists, for example, if doesn't exist, whatever. So I have the element here, and you don't see because it's very small, but I want to add the assertion. Okay. And finally, I can complete the recording. What happened? It's generating a test for me. Let's save the test. So this is the code generated by Espresso Test Recorder. So it's trying to click on the menu and then clicking on the option. So far so good, right? So even if you are writing Espresso, you can do in 2 minutes, but it's good to know that you can have this tool. So what's next? Use this test, but not locally. I want to use this test in the Google Cloud. Okay, to do that, first of all, I have to run a new configuration of the test, and as I said 5 minutes ago, first, select the module, the runner, and the target, in this case, is lab device matrix. Okay, of course, it's asking me to select a project, and we have Bangkok, and I can define the matrix configuration for this test. Okay, let's do, we have a sample with 18, but let's do 1. Okay, that's it. Let me check. I want a Nexus 6, physical, I want a Nexus 5, platform 6, 5.1, locale, I have only English in the laptop, orientation, landscape, and portrait. So, and it's telling me how many configurations it's running. Oh, it's gonna happen with this configuration. Okay, I say okay, everything is sorted, and I'm available to run the test. Meanwhile, we can check the terminal has going with still is running with the test that I triggered in the terminal. And oh, there is a message from under the studio. Okay, has started. Now it's uploading the APK. Okay, let's go to the Firebase console. Updating the Firebase console. That's the test that I'm running, the robot test. It's not still, like under the studio is uploading the APK. It's validating the APK. It doesn't appear. But the other that I triggered here in the console is actually running. Okay, so simple application. With robot test, in this case, I didn't write anything. So I only generate the test, and now it's running on the cloud. I think that is awesome and could be very helpful because if you are scared about the code, for example, well, you have other tools to do that. Let's see the execution. For 2 devices are not allowed to execute for the API level 19, but for the others 2, it's running in English with orientation, portrait, and landscape. Okay, let's check here. Oh, here we have some kind of results. Oh, that's the other implementation. It's starting. Let's see. Okay. Okay, that's the one that I trigger by Android Studio instrumentation and the other robo. Okay, let's wait a little bit only to see that everything is working. Meanwhile, we can see one example of the previous execution. So 15 hours ago, I tried to do something with gcloud. You have here that the client was gcloud, so it was a robot test. And I have some failing tests, others are not executed, and others are okay. Let's see one of them, the logs, the screenshots, and the activity map. So as that we saw before, quite interesting. The start of the activity, it's a landscape tablet, and we are going to the final screen, that is this screen. Okay, so far so good. And as well, you have a video. That's pretty fancy. Okay, with all the operations that they are doing, I'm not doing anything here. So now robot test is going option by option of the activity, trying to get one error or trying to do something. The next time that I'm going to execute the same test for Nexus 7, the version 2012, is going to execute the same user activity in the same order. It's perfect. It's perfect. Because I can detect, imagine that tomorrow I have one problem with the payment process. I can design one test and always execute in the same way. Okay, let's see what happened with our friends. One, it's done. Started 8 minutes ago. So that means that we have the results here. Exactly. That's it. And the other is trying to execute, so I don't want to stop more. The whole point about this is that you can run on an easy way. So only I open a new project in Android Studio, I set up the Firebase plugin, and that's it. You can start running your tests. I think that is a very good point for you if you want to improve the quality of your application. And the last thing that I want to say that please don't be shy, and after the talk, if you have some questions about testing, about Espresso, about instrumentation, please grab me and we can talk a little bit about that. And that's the thing. Don't be shy, please, guys. And thank you very much for everything. I hope that you have enjoyed with testing in Firebase. Thank you.
ค่ะขอเสียงประมือให้กับมิสเตอร์วิลล่าอินากิด้วยค่ะ Google Developers Expert Android